Welcome to Church for Skeptics, giving answers to the hard questions concerning the Christian faith. Your host and teacher is Dan Arsenault.
Hi, welcome to Church for Skeptics. We are beginning our third year, and it's amazing to me that Church for Skeptics has lasted and has a growing audience. I've never done this in the 2 years that we've been on, and I just want to talk to you for just a minute about funding. If you are interested in helping with this program on a financial basis, I want to invite you to do that. Of course, we have to raise money to put the program on and pay for the airtime and so forth, and then I'm going to Berlin to teach in January, so I have to raise money for that as a missions trip. If you're interested in helping financially with Church for Skeptics, you can do one of two things. You can email me and let me know your interest, and I'll get back to you and give you the details. We are funded through a nonprofit organization called Educare, which is in town here. And if you'll email me at readarsenault@earthlink.net, that's Reid Arsenault, R-E-I-D, arsenault@earthlink.net, and let me know your interest. I'll get back to you. Or you can go to the website, which is you'll see on the program here, www.churchforskeptics.org, and you'll get instructions on how to support the program financially. So I don't want to say a lot about that, but on the first couple of programs for this year, I'll probably mention that. So we only have about 30 people who have kept this thing going for 2 years now, and as we start into the third year, I thought it would be appropriate to do that. So if you like the program or you're interested in helping, please respond, and we'll be very grateful. We're going to start a new series, and it's going to be very different in some ways than what we've been doing, and I hope that you will stay with it. It's going to be very difficult. You can't say it all in one program, you know. And I don't know what to call this series. I want to call it Last Man Standing, but let me kind of tell you what we're going to do, and then I'll try to do it. We're going to approach Christianity, but it's going to be from kind of around the barn. We're going to talk about logic and philosophy and the rules of logic and how they apply to any pursuit of knowledge, whether it's science or math or history or anything. And I'm going to talk about that today, so if you just all of a sudden we're tuning in and we're listening, you might not know this was even a program about Christianity. I am going to start with a Bible verse, and I'll refer back to this a couple of times. So I'm going to read, and this is the most interesting thing to me. This is from John chapter 1. Now, you need to keep in mind that the book of John, and of course I'm speaking from a conservative theological position here, but the book of John, everybody would agree, is the last gospel written. Most people agree it was written somewhere around 90 A.D., and it's very different than what are called the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in that it is much less chronological. John chapter 20, verse 31, and I'm not going to read that to you, but I'll just tell you what it says. It says, "These things are written that you might believe, and that believing you might have eternal life." So this is basically, the book of John is an apologetic. That is to say, it is a defense of the deity of Christ, the claim that Jesus is God come in the flesh, and it is an apologetic or a defense of who Jesus is and what he did. And that's the purpose of the book. It's written for exactly the same reason that I do Church for Skeptics, to get people to consider the claims of Jesus Christ. Now, he's writing not so much to Christians as he is to Greeks, you might say. I want to read you the first couple of verses, which are fantastic to me once you know a little bit of background behind them. It says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it." Now, the word there, "in the beginning was the Word," is the Greek word logos. The Greek philosophers, and I'm going to start with Aristotle in just a few minutes, the Greek philosophers believed, as I do, that there are eternal truths, things that are true, and they used the word logos or word to describe those eternal truths. things that are inherently true, things that are self-evident. We'll talk about how Aristotle approached that in just a few minutes. So when John is writing, he's actually borrowing a word that was used by the Greek philosophers to find some common ground, and that's what we're going to try to do in just a few minutes, is find some common ground based on the rule of logic. Now, what he's saying is he's agreeing with them that there are eternal truths, that there are things that have always been true, always will be true, not relative truths, but just things that are true. Some of that truth is the way logic works, the way reason works, and we'll explain that in just a few minutes. Now, what John is doing here in his opening salvo here in the book of John is he's saying, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning there was eternal truth. That's what the same thing the Greek philosophers would say. And he says then that, and the Word, or this eternal truth, was with God, and the Word was God. So his appeal, here's what he's saying. You believe in eternal truth. You believe in absolute truth, things that are just true and that correspond to reality. There is a reality. There are eternal truths. And what you don't know, he's saying to the Greeks, is that all these truths that you think exist are inherent to a person, that they are inherent in the character of God, the person of God. And later on, in John chapter 1, verse 14, he says, the Word, or the Logos, was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father. So he's saying that Jesus is God, and he also is eternal truth. So all the things that are true are inherent to the character of God. I agree with that. That's been really exciting for me, and to see that John's approach to writing this, and of course I think he did it under inspiration, if that makes sense. So let me get my notes here, and we'll head in from that as an introduction. And the goal here is to find common ground. We're not going to talk about Christianity for a while. We're going to talk about logic and reason and what are called the first principles of logic. It's kind of and I hate to use the word rules. Nobody likes rules, but these are the principles that just are. They are self-evident, inherent truths about thinking, about how we reason, about how we communicate. Aristotle is credited with, and I don't know what the word is. I don't know if he discovered, maybe that's a good word. He discovered logic. He's generally credited with that. Wrote a lot, of course, concerning that. And the idea of discovering is an important word because he's not inventing something. He's not creating rules of logic, and he would not have said that as well. He is defining and discovering things that are already and have eternally been in existence. That's why John says, in the beginning was these eternal truths, which he's called the Word. Let me read you a quote. I'm reading a book that I would really recommend. If you are interested as a skeptic or as a believer in this book, it's called Unshakable Foundations. I don't know how well we'll get this on camera, but I want to show it to you. Unshakable Foundation. You can get it through Amazon. And it's probably the best comprehensive book about apologetics and the foundations of the Christian faith that I've ever read. And one of the Christian philosophers is a guy named Mortimer J. Adler. And here's what he says. I hope you'll get into this with me. He says the fundamentals of logic should be as transcultural as the mathematics with which the principles of logic are associated. The principles of logic are neither Western nor Eastern, but universal. And we'll get into this in a little while. You always hear about the difference between Western logic and Eastern logic. And I hope to put some doubt in your mind, skeptical minds about that. What we're talking about here is that there are valid and invalid, correct and incorrect, forms of reasoning, of just the way that we think and the way that we communicate. Aristotle said also that all knowledge begins with these self-evident truths, and he called them first principles. This may sound complicated to you. It's not. It's really quite simple, and we use these every day. We're just not philosophers, and we don't define them that way. If there is a reality, in other words, something exists, which is the basic question, why is there something rather than nothing?